Welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting on August 6th, our regular scheduled meeting. Please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of the order of agenda. What is the Commissioner's wishes?
Any items, Mayor, to be added or anything like that? I'll make a motion to approve.
Been moved to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Eric. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes of July 16th. They have been distributed. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I move we approve.
Thank you, Brad. It's been moved that we approve as presented. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mike. Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of July 16th. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Building permits. Building permits have been distributed. Any of the commissioners have any questions? Any questions for any of the commissioners? Chair to entertain a motion, please.
Motion to accept the building permits.
Right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brad. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the building permits report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, the next order of business is the consent agenda. It's been presented. Are there any additions or corrections that the commissioners would like to make?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And move that the consent agenda be accepted as presented. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mike. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda. First, I'm sorry, my apologies. We have a special introduction tonight. I would like to call on Chief Keith Yankee.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. It is my privilege tonight to introduce Officer Ryan Feldman to the Commission, who is serving as our new Cultural Liaison Officer. As we continue to evolve as a city and as a police department, we've discovered the need to work with our new American population. And as part of that came up with a Cultural Liaison Officer who will be a full-time job working with the minority population, the new Americans, and how we can best serve them and help as we progress as a city. Officer Feldman put in for the job, and I selected him and wanted to bring him here tonight to introduce him to you. This will be a position that we are creating from the ground up, so it will be November before it is fully operational, but he will start that position while he's still on patrol and start building the relationships and trust with all of our communities so that we're one united West Fargo moving forward. So with that said, I just wanted to introduce Officer Ryan Feldman to you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Commissioners. I just want to say that I'm very excited to take on this position and get this program started with the city and start building from the ground up and start building the relationships within the community and ultimately making them stronger. So I'm very excited and happy to take it on.
Thank you.
I had the pleasure of participating in that last week, and we went for about 3.5 hours, I believe. The engagement from the immigrant
population was amazing. They are very excited about this, and I commend our department for stepping forward and offering this initiative. So, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on to the next order of business is the regular agenda. This is the public hearing, district number 2249, and resolution in determining not sufficient protests received. Mr. Shockley?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the West Fargo Commission. This involves Street Improvement District 2249. As you may recall, when we do street improvement districts, we need to have a resolution of necessity published. That's different than if it's a water or sewer district where a resolution of necessity is not needed. The resolution of necessity for this district was published on June 18th and June 25th as required by the Century Code. The project consists of installing a street signal, traffic signal. I was corrected by our engineer that it's a traffic signal, and some additional improvements to the intersection that enters into the downtown area. The extent of the improvement district extends approximately to 13th Avenue, south to 13th Avenue, and north to Main Avenue, and an equal distance east and west. We have not received any objections or protests regarding Street Improvement District 2249. You are required to have a public hearing on the matter. We haven't heard of any issues regarding it. The engineer can certainly answer any questions regarding the engineering aspects of the district. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions of John? We'll close this portion of the meeting and we'll open it up to a public hearing. Is there any comments from the public? Are there any comments from the public? Does anyone here wish to speak on this resolution? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Back to the regular meeting. Commissioners, what is your...
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you, Mike. Been moved. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eric. It's been moved and seconded that District number 2249 and resolution determining not sufficient protests received as presented by Mr. Shockley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business on the regular agenda is a public hearing and first reading of zoning ordinance amendment to section 4-421. Mr. Solberg.
Thank you, Board President and Commission. This application or proposed amendment is brought to the attention of staff and an ET Planning Commission member due to a property owner wanting to split off a small piece of land for a non-farm single-family dwelling within the Ag District. The property owner is proposing to split off a 3-acre parcel, and this cannot be accommodated under current subdivision or zoning regulations, which currently require a 40-acre parcel within an Ag District. In the past, people would pursue a land use plan amendment for either a 10 or 15-acre piece of land to be rezoned to rural residential or rural estate. Staff has not been comfortable with this as it sets up future possibilities for development, which is premature, does not have adequate services or agencies to take over maintenance of the roads or infrastructure when it's outside of city limits. West Fargo 2.0 further does not support premature development outside of the current city limits. As you recall, we've had sort of this deferred development sector outside of our city limits and certainly outside of our proposed diversion. The proposed amendment here would allow for a non-farm single-family dwelling as a conditional use within the A district with a condition that the remainder of the existing lot or a quarter section be deed restricted until a point that the area is rezoned, accompanied with an area plan to provide for urban infrastructure or the release of the property from the city's zoning authority. This current method has been used in Cass County within their subdivision ordinance for about the past 15 years. It's been successful, it's not been challenged. What we're proposing with the assistance of the city attorney is to have this in our zoning ordinance, and that's where you see the amendment proposed before you. John's also put together a draft of a deed restriction form And again, this would restrict that property owner within the existing lot or within the quarter section to not develop beyond the small lot that they create for the non-farm single-family dwelling unless urban infrastructure is brought in or unless we release it from our zoning authority. So staff and the Planning Commission are comfortable with this and are forwarding it to you tonight for a first reading and a public hearing. I'm available for any questions, and John has worked with us as well on this, and of course could answer any questions you may have as well.
As part of the ordinance, there is a process that they can appeal to the planning and zoning about changing it?
What it would require is a conditional use permit. So we would actually review through conditional use any proposed non-farm single-family dwelling. If it's a farm, they can build away. If it's related to the farm, it's considered accessory. But if it's a non-farm, this gives them an opportunity to create a one, and actually in our staff report we talk about a 2.5 acre lot, but it's actually 1 acre. We found the 2.5 acre was kind of arbitrary. 1 acre fits with the county public health department's requirements for on-site septic systems. So,
is this outside of our city limits, or is it within the extraterrestrial?
Well, it's really anything that's zoned ag. We really don't have much of anything within our city limits that's zoned ag. Anything that is really proposed to be developed. However, if we were to annex out into areas for whatever reason, and they were still zoned ag, we could still do this within our city limits. What it does is prevents premature development from occurring, allows a person to have a house, lets them use their land, but prevents them from causing a strain to city services.
Further questions of Mr. Soberg? All right, thank you, Tim. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Public hearing is scheduled.
We'll close the regular agenda, and we'll move on to a public hearing. First reading of zoning ordinance amendment to section 4-421. Public hearing is in session. Is there any public comment on this? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Make a motion to put it on first reading.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you, Brad. It's been moved and second to approve the first reading and zoning ordinance amendment to section 4-421. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business is a public hearing and first reading on the rezoning of Halverson's Industrial Park, 3rd edition. Mr. Soberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commission, this is simply a plat to prepare a property for a retention pond. As you can see in the sketch outline here, this is actually 4 lots. The top lot here is what is proposed to be a retention pond. These lots here would combine all of these narrow lots within the Halverson's Industrial Park. And then there's kind of this outlier here of bush that we're trying to work out getting included in this as well. Planning Commission reviewed this and has prepared their recommendation to the City Commission to approve. Tonight is proposed for a first reading and public hearing. No zoning change other than that changing to public. Typically this would just be a plat, but the top northernmost lot there is now changing to public, so we have a public hearing scheduled and first reading of that ordinance change. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Soberg. Is there any questions of the commission? Hearing none, we'll close the regular meeting and we'll move into the public hearing. Is there any public comment on the first reading of the rezoning of Halverson's Industrial Park, 3rd edition? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Now move on to Commission's decision on the first reading and rezoning of Halverson's Industrial Park, third edition. Commissioners?
Make a motion to put it on first reading.
Thank you. Mike? Is there a second, please? Second by Eric. It's been moved and seconded that we put it on first reading. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5 on the regular agenda is review the resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants and exchanging them for $30,260,000 of refunding improvement bonds. Oh, I missed one. My apologies.
I got so many, sir.
My apologies, everyone. Fourth item on the regular agenda is a public hearing of the rezoning of Wilds 11th edition. Mr. Solberg.
Thank you again, Your Honor. Tonight, we had intended to have both the public hearing and first reading. However, the applicant here is proposing to change up their application a little bit. This portion of the plat, and if you recall, we had reviewed the improvement district at the previous meeting. Initially, it was proposed to be rezoned R2. They're looking at now R1SM. At the request of the city attorney and planning director, we're proposing that tonight simply the public hearing be held because it was scheduled and noticed in the paper. However, we defer the first reading back to the planning commission for a recommendation based on this rezoning and bring it back at a future meeting for a first reading. We think we can have this at the next planning commission meeting, which will be next Tuesday, and be before you with a first reading at the immediate next meeting after that. The developer here is again proposing a number of single-family lots. At their previous application, it was 125 R1 zone lots and 48 R2 zone lots. I presume now it would be around 40 to 47 R1SM lots instead of R2 lots. But we'll provide more detailed recommendation to you at the next meeting. Tonight, simply I would recommend opening the public hearing. If there's any comments to be had, take them and defer to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Solberg. We'll close the regular meeting and move into the public hearing on the rezoning of Wilds 11th edition. Is there any public comment on these changes? Is there any public comment on these changes? Is there any public comment on the rezoning of the Wilds 11th edition? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And we'll take Mr. Solberg's recommendation and we'll address this at next meeting.
So do we need a motion to table it, or can we just
That's it. Nope.
motion to table it?
No
Nope,
motion.
just let it go.
No
Okay,
table.
good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Next order of business on the regular agenda is to review the resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants and exchanging them for $30,260,000 worth of refunding improvement bonds of 2018, Series B. Mr. Shockley.
Good evening, members of the West Fargo Commission. Mike Manstrom from Doherty is also present. We had the bond sale today for the $30,260,000 refunding improvement bonds of 2018, the Series B. In your packet, we provided a draft resolution. That is the same as the resolution I handed out tonight, except the bid results are included in the updated resolution. Today was a sale, it was a public sale. Mike can go over the public sale results. I can say it was very good results given the market, and maybe Mike can answer questions about the sale, and I can certainly answer any questions about the legal issues, if any.
Thank you, John. And President Dardis, Commissioners Mike Manstrom, Doherty & Company. As John mentioned this morning at 10:30 a.m., Doherty & Company conducted a public sale from our Bismarck office of the $30,230,000 refunding improvement bonds, special assessment bonds for the city of West Fargo. This bond issue consists of 11 separate special assessment districts, which you saw in your packet. Those districts are street, water, sewer improvement districts. It's your annual financing for the improvements you make throughout the course of the year. This would be considered the city's annual financing for these 11 districts. We received 8 bids this morning in our office, and that certainly gives you the comfort to know that you're in the market. 8 bids, very competitive bids, and the bids are from the East Coast to the West Coast. Robert W. Baird submitted the low bid at a 3.52 out of New Jersey. We had Hilliard out of Indiana, J.P. Morgan, New York, Mesro Financial, Chicago, Citigroup out of Los Angeles, and Wells Fargo bid out of Charlotte, North Carolina. UBS was out of New York as well. So 8 competitive bids. If you look at the bid totals, you'll see that they're all very close. That means they're very competitive. 3.52 submitted as a low bid. The cover bid, which is the second bid, J.P. Hilliard submitted that at a 3.57. That was a spread of $200,000 on $30 million in total interest costs. So they were close. So you were competitive. That's what you can rest assured that you received today's most cost-effective financing. That said, those 8 bids are received. John prepared the resolution. I'd be happy to answer any question. We pass the resolution. We lock up the money and wire transfer at the closing date.
Thank you. Any questions? Any additional comments, John?
We just need a motion to approve the bond resolution.
Mike, I definitely like the interest rate, thank you. I mean, it came out,
Absolutely.
Thank the bidders, actually, because it came out very well. I did notice our debt, and again, as we always talk, that's the unfortunate part about a growing community like we are.
I would like to add to you, because you always have the Moody's question mark. And Moody's will be in West Fargo, I think it's August 23rd, it's a little flexible schedule, to visit personally with the city. And it's theoretically a meet and greet on Moody's part, but when they call Aaron and Tina to set up a conference call to establish a rating again, they always send out questions in advance. And I think we'll prepare some questions and send it to them in advance so they can help us answer in person those questions we try to answer for you, Mark.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
What's the Commission's pleasure on the resolution authorizing the issuance of the improvement warrants and exchanging them for $30,260,000 with a refunding improvement bond?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Simmons, second. Second by Eric. Thank you. Been moved and second to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of improvement warrants and exchanging them for $30,260,000 worth of refunding improvement bonds for 2018. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business is item number 6. Review the potential landscape improvement concepts for 13th Avenue East. Chris.
Mr. President and Commissioners, today I want to talk to you about some landscape improvements. We asked Brad Reinertz from Landscape Concepts to come and talk to our team of engineering, public works, planning, and economic development about what we can start doing in some of our more urbanized areas. We keep hearing words that we bandy about, like urban environment, but what we're happy to see in 13th Avenue is we keep shrinking these boulevards we have until there's next to nothing left out there. And what can we start putting out there for amenities, and what can we do to make it give West Fargo a earmark of what we're out here doing here? So let's get through here. That's strange. But we want to develop gateways into West Fargo. So this is some techniques we can do for signage and trees. So whenever you come into different places in West Fargo, you always have the same type of picture. So you know that you're changing communities. You're out of Fargo. You're coming to West Fargo. You're coming from the rural areas into our community. We wanted to talk about the smaller boulevards. What can we do with that? No, grass doesn't always work. On 13th Avenue, we used to have a 13th Avenue landscaping plan. And we discovered as we're expanding that road is those landscaping plans don't always make sense. Nor do our businesses always appreciate having these large trees in front of their businesses blocking their signs. So they'd like to look at something else we could do out in these areas. We want to talk about ways we put things out there, be a little bit smarter, make them more sustainable, less maintenance, so it's easier on our guys as we move forward. And once again, we want to make sure things are repeatable. Wherever you go, you see the same type of repeated message coming to you. And we want to tie things into some of our major projects we have in town, like downtown Cheyenne Street and down to Cheyenne 32 as that's going to be developed. So right here in your packets, you have a copy of this also. But you can see some of the different things we're talking about. Some of the issues they have out here is like a blade sign, right? This is 17th Avenue and 17th Street, 13th Avenue come in. So we have these blade signs right here, and you see right here is a little blow up of them. I apologize, they're not too big here, but each sign has a different letter on them. As you drive at them at an angle, you can see it says West Fargo. These can be backlit, LED lit, many numerous type things. And plus, if one of them was to get hit, you can replace that one and not have to have everything out there. Right now, we have, in this corner by Spitfire, we have a Welcome West Fargo sign, which isn't exactly all that visible. It's off on the side. So it's something that's have right in the middle. We also talked about having some trees that are a little bit skinnier on top. They don't block a lot of frontage and things like that. And we can also uplight those, have some lights in the middle that go up through them. So when you come into West Fargo, you can kind of see, hey, I'm coming in someplace special. We go down here, next big one over here is an intersection improvement you can do on each one of these corners. You see you have a wider area that's paved. We have some different colors pavement in there with a flower garden in the back and some bench seating. That'll give little people places to gather, to rest if they're using our bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and just something for people to do. Then we kind of have some more tree ideas down this way, some bus shelters, and over here they have an idea of a low type fence that we can use instead of bushes and trees in the median that still will give that idea, that traffic calming idea that it ties down the area so people don't want to speed as much. So it's not really a lot of information. Well, it's a lot of information, I guess, but I'm not asking for any decisions right now. I just wanted to present this to you and give an idea going forward that we'll probably be coming back with you, some combination of these that we might want to see on the 13th Avenue. So I'm available for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
A couple questions. Chris, with the project on 13th now, did we provide any funding for any of these amenities at all? We had to take out some trees and stuff, I believe, because we widened out, particularly the north side.
We included some tree replacement, and that's what really started us going down this path, is we discontinued the 13th Avenue landscaping plan. We have some trees in here to replace, and we're going to have to take down that West Fargo sign. So we're basically going to have this barren landscape out there, and what do we do to replace this and make this a nicer area as we come into town?
Well, at least perhaps some of this could be funded with some of the funds we do have within that project now.
Right. A lot of these are fairly low cost. I forgot my cost sheet. Dustin, Tim, would you remember some of these costs? Maybe Matt? He's not here? We all kind of forgot. The most expensive of all of these is actually the intersection. Each one of these corners, I think, was about $15,000, $12,000 to $15,000. So the intersection would be $60,000. The signs are quite a bit less expensive. Those were, I think, I want to say about 15, 20.
They were $9,000 a piece, and there's 5.
45,000. Thank you, Dustin. You do remember. Thank you. So those costs out here, I'll forward you all the costs. They may be in your packet, but it's so some of those monies are included, but we just want to make sure that we make the right choices.
Yeah, the other question is, has this or will this go before the forestry department or board so they can
we can
give their input?
We have a meeting here next week, and Commissioner Simmons is on it, and we'll include
You can't get rid of me, can you?
Is this something that you're looking at doing like on Main Avenue, both ends?
It's a combination. We can put it down anywhere. We can put it down on Veterans and 32nd. We can put it on 40th. Wherever we come into West Fargo is something that's repeatable. So that was one of the specific asks that we had of this project was what can we use that's repeatable, that you have the same message wherever you come into town.
And I like the idea of the lighted trees, but with all the snow, we're going to plow out onto the boulevards and then cover up those lights.
Very true. That may not be all that good of an idea.
Unless you're gonna have somebody shovel off the
I don't think I want to volunteer my guys to
Okay,
do
well,
that.
you know, public service or something like that, huh?
You know, one of the other things, Chris, is, I mean, some of this is above and beyond, and some of it's practical. But my concern, Commissioners, and this is something we have to be serious and look at, is when we commit to things like this, we also have to remember that it's got to be maintained. And so we have to start committing probably more funds to maintaining some of this, because some of our boulevards, some of our are not that well looking, Chris, right now.
Right.
And I realize it's part-time college kids, so we have to, if we're going to get serious on this kind of stuff, I think we have to get serious on the other end as well, and that means providing more funding or whatever mechanism we have to make sure that it's all maintained, because it all looks nice here until it sits for a year. And then next year it doesn't look very nice anymore.
See that on Main Avenue, those are some beautiful things there when they're weeded. I was just driving down there this last week, and I was seeing some of those taller weeds kind of sneak back in there.
Yeah, we need
maintain it on a regular basis.
to have somebody get out there, and they need to look good at all times, not just when we want them to look good, you know.
Exactly.
So that's things we're going to have to work on as well.
Thank you.
Here's my ramble. Thank you.
Any more comments or suggestions for Chris? As noted, this is not an actionable item, so we're just, information. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is to review and accept the 2020 urban grant for Cheyenne Street. Chris?
Mr. President and Commissioners, I'm excited to say that we were competing statewide for urban grant for our core area of town, and well, I'm here tonight because we won. We won a nice big grant. What is the Urban Aid Grant? It was actually developed through Governor Bergen's push for his Main Street initiative. He wants to start seeing communities reinvest in their downtown areas. It's a project they cobbled together funding sources from urban aid funds. They got some forestry department funds. They got funds about all sorts of different places. When this first started, being one of the larger communities, I was a little concerned about them taking funds out of their urban pot, because that's the money we use to rebuild Cheyenne Street. But luckily, we received this. The program's designated to make improvements to the core business district areas. As we started to read through our team, once again, the same guys as the last team, we were reading through the requirements for this thing. We're saying this grant is almost written for West Fargo for what we're doing downtown Cheyenne Street. So we got very excited by this. The infrastructure improvements are intended to promote multimodal forms of transportation. So it's not only cars, but we need to take a look at pedestrians, bicyclists, however mode you want to travel. We need to adjust our roads to be workable for those people. We got a $2.4 million grant. In West Fargo's, we have to provide 20% match. So that's about $480,000 local funds for roughly a $3 million project. So we're getting a real nice bang for our dollar. This is one of the few times I actually say we probably got the full 80% funding for a project. Like Cheyenne Street, I think we're probably about 30% funding for that project. So it's a big giant difference. Our project area for this is Cheyenne Street between Main Avenue down to 7th Avenue. Project overview, we're looking at road diet, so we're basically going to shrink the number of lanes down there. We're looking at a lot of head-to-head traffic, 2 lanes traffic, some bulb outs, not only to shorten that crossing distance for the pedestrians, but also find a refuge for parking cars, just kind of guide everyone down the center road where they need to go. We want to expand the sidewalks on each side from that 6 to 8 foot, just make them wider so we have more use and beneficial use for our downtown areas. We need to revise a lot of the access points down on Cheyenne Street. That's a huge issue with all the driveways. We need to combine driveways. You're going to have to eliminate driveways, and maybe find driveways on the side of the streets or in alleys to access some of these businesses. Cars and people don't really mix too well. So more of those locations you can eliminate, the better flow for your pedestrians and better safety it is for all users of the roadway. We want to expand the number of parking stalls out there, make them more available to the businesses directly in front. A lot of streetscaping. Previous item, we talked about streetscaping, so we want to bring some more of that into it. Street furniture, that'd be your planters, your benches, anything that, garbage cans, recycling, all those items. Lighting, we want to continue the lighting we have down there in front of the Cheyenne Plaza and continue that up and down, both ways. Maybe find ways we can string banners or whatever we want across the street. And we want to include some bus stops for our transit use. I also threw in here, you have an entire grant in your package, so these maps are near the back. But right here is Main Avenue here in Cheyenne Street. Our concept that we put out here is kind of a repeatable concept. We have one lane in each direction, one northbound, one southbound lane. We want to add parallel parking on the east side of the road and make it available for any business along this area who wants to surrender those extra 8 to 10 feet to us to be able to put diagonal parking in front of their businesses. So this way, right here is Choice Financial. They have an exit right here. What we show here, this is just planning. This is not what the final plan is. But if they were to combine and access back here to the alley, so they come in off the side street and use their drive-through and come out through the alley and back out, we can eliminate that access and add diagonal parking. You can do the same down this way. So that's kind of just showing all the different abilities we can do out in this area.
Chris?
Yes.
This is the first scene of this at all, correct?
Well, we threw one out earlier this spring when we had our truck route meeting and the downtown visit.
Okay.
We did expose everyone who owns a business
so
down there.
So has the DBA been involved with this?
They have been, Matt?
Because I highly suggest that you keep them, because I can see some things that you're mentioning they're probably not going to like. So.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of discussion that we're going to have and some horse trading. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's the whole guide and blueprint where we want to go for downtown Cheyenne Street. Matt, would you add to that?
Matt Marshall, Director of Economic Development. We during the original process where we did the downtown study and added on to the Cheyenne Street study to look at what we could do to soften up the northern portion of Cheyenne Street. The Downtown Business Association was involved in that process, and this grant is actually written off of that study that we had done already. So they've been involved. We'll continue to be involved when it comes to picking out furniture and things like that. Clearly, there's sensitivity that needs to be taken when you talk about these access points, and no one expects to go in and just use a hammer. So,
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I should explain that involving federal funds in this, we have to do a full NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act. So we're going to have to produce a large document for documented CADX, have public meetings, contacts back and forth. So this is going to be a long process. This is for construction in 2020, and we probably have to move pretty quick to start our environmental document probably
to even meet that
month.
date.
Excuse me?
To even meet that date, you're going to have to move pretty quickly.
Yep, we certainly have to move quite quickly.
Chris, when would you expect that the public meetings and that type of thing will take place with the Downtown Business Association, Mr. Solberg and Planning, Mr. Marshall and ED?
We're going to work very closely with Matt and all his ties to business. Once we get a scope of work an RFP out for our environmental document, we'll get a timeline put together. My guess is probably be about a 2-month time frame. Probably have a kickoff meeting, and it'll be the first public input meeting. I think this entire new process for all of us, it's typically with environmental process, you don't pre-select your alternative, but this one, the alternative was competitively selected, so we have an alternative selected. We just have to work through some iterations of least impact and how it does impact people. We're certainly nothing's drawn in stone here yet. We have a concept of where we want to go. This is just some more of the same, just showing this entire corridor. So I go down to the next page, I talk about some of the bump outs. This kind of gives a real good idea that we can have diagonal parking here is our concept with parallel parking on the east side, and we want to narrow that crossing distance for any pedestrians out there to about 24 to 26 feet. That way they're exposed less time to any type of cars that are out there, shorter crossing distance. And then also it gives you a little area for protection for these vehicles that are parked there so these people don't meander off to the sides when they're driving.
Has engineering done an analysis on your suggestions there on parking, what the net gain or net loss is?
Well, the gain's going to be quite substantial. We haven't done a complete count on this, but considering right now that there's no parking on the east side of the roadway and there's only parallel parking on the west side, it's going to be a very large gain in that parking availability. Here's an idea for the for a bus stop on 7th Avenue, just west of Cheyenne Street, about over here. So this is available for users of the high rise and the housing over here. So this is a little idea for a parklet. As the chief has always said, he doesn't want a parklet because he doesn't want to suffocate on the trucks going by. So we got rid of the trucks. So now we won't have that. So we won't have cement mixer out here. But it's whole idea is a little area that we were showing those corners in the previous item that you're able actually out here and enjoy this space. Maybe some cafe tables, something like that. So I'm available for questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Chris, the stoplight at 7th and Cheyenne, that's a separate project, correct?
It is, correct.
And what's the timetable on that? Is that going to be done at the same time, or is it going to be done prior to?
It's probably be done prior to. We allotted for this, and previously in one of those we had a separate project listed when we sent this to the state. That project, you just proved that tonight, the assessment district. So once we get that designed and bid out, like I said, there's a large lead time in getting those poles, so it's probably be constructed here probably next fall when that'd be done. And
obviously, we'll want to coordinate the designs and everything else so we don't
my guess is
run into problems there.
Design all the way through Main Avenue from 7th and make sure everything works together.
Thanks.
My compliments to the team, to Mr. Solberg, Chris, Mr. Scott, Mr. Marshall. Who else was engaged? Anybody else? I reviewed the application and they did an excellent job. And for the benefactors of $2,377,000. So good job. Very good job.
Thank you. I am looking for the City Commission to formally accept this project, and I'll write a letter to DOT with your decision.
We have to formally accept the
grant.
The urban grant. I got notification on that again, so Chair would entertain a motion to accept the 2020 urban grant for Cheyenne Street.
I'll move.
Thank you, Brad. It's been is there a second, please?
Second.
And moved and seconded by Eric. All those in favor of the approval of the 2020 urban grant for Cheyenne Street signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Chris. Next order of business is number 8. Review the constructed site versus approved plans of the CO-S overlay district for Bernie's liquor site. Mr. Solberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, kind of going to open this up for Mr. Sintez. Just want to bring to light to the Commission, there are 3 new members since this was approved. What was approved on April 17th, 2017 was a deviation from our Cheyenne overlay district. At the time, the Downtown Design Review Committee had reviewed what Mr. Sintez had proposed, and there was a compromise made, and that's what this body had approved for him to build. Again, after that, issued a revised site plan, and Planning Office authorized the permit to be issued. Noticed not too long ago that the building was built to the original plans, or excuse me, the site was built to the original plans. The building was built as it was agreed to, but the site was not. And so I notified Mr. Tintis, and and he wants a chance to talk to the commission about what was constructed. So, Wally, I'd give it up to you. If you have any questions of me, I'm available. The picture here is taken today of the site, so.
Thank you, Jim. Well, Tim is right. The permit was issued a year and 3 months ago. Took forever to get the doggone thing built. But anyway, it's built, almost ready for occupancy. Lots of parking in front like I wanted. And a great big driveway on the north side, which consumes 20 foot from the telephone light pole that you see there over, which is the alley. Sandy's Donuts and myself paid for that alley. And we have 40 foot in and out at that point between that and my rock garden. Excuse me. So, I think we've done what we intended to do, but why didn't we put the in and out on the other side of the second pole? And it's very simple. Since the permit was issued, a great big building came up on Cheyenne Street. I call it the high-rise. You can call it what you want. I want to tell you folks something. I am completely upset a little bit with Chris's and the other group's ideas about Cheyenne Street, insofar as I've been there ever since it started. At the present time, from the center line on Cheyenne Street to the east side, 2 lanes, 25-foot total width, okay? On the west side, center line to the curb, in front of my place, and in front of anything north of 7th Avenue, except for the high-rise, 23.5 feet. Okay. In front of the high-rise, these are my measurements, 37 feet from the center line to the curb at the high-rise. My problem is, at 37 foot, driving an 18-foot vehicle into a diagonal parking allows you 19 feet to back into a very heavy traveled street, which obviously the state is also helping us pay for that. I can't imagine why we want to accomplish that. I'm just waiting for the first big accident, and I'm sure it's going to happen. My pickup alone is 19 feet long. Your car that you drove over here tonight is probably anywhere from 17 thereabouts. When you back out of those slots, heaven help you. If you're driving a small one, you can't see who's coming or going. Therefore, I'm saying that what I'm asking for is to leave my ingress and outgress alone over there in front of the liquor store, as it is today. And insofar as Chris brought that subject up, that a whole new idea is being contemplated, I would suggest that the thing be tabled for a while and leave me alone and really study this traffic plan, because I don't see it working now or in the future. That's my opinion. That's basically my say on this thing, and I want to leave that open because it's working out perfectly right now. And if it's not going to work in the future, we better discuss the future. Thank you.
So, hold on, Wally, a minute. I just have one question.
Yeah.
So, you came before us and we compromised with you in doing what the last concern was, and then you didn't even do that. I'm just curious what because you did agree to compromise. What changed your mind? What changed that all of a sudden?
Because the street to the south of me is providing very little parking. I had one client come to see me who went down there to talk about a retail establishment in that building, and absolutely no dice, no parking. we have parking. We got parking in front, we got parking in back, and we got a parking on the side. We can provide parking, but
What about all the landscaping though that's not here either? What about the landscaping, Wally?
where?
That's supposed to be out in front of this facility, out in front of your building and on the side, the landscaping.
The landscaping that I put in,
Well, it should be there.
well, it is there.
I think there's a lot more than that, isn't there, that we're missing?
I think he's referring to.
Well, I have what's called my rock garden there. And then, 40 feet south of the rock garden is where the liquor store, or not the liquor store, but the furniture store starts. And, in between the two, we got about 8 or 9 stalls for parking. Can you kind of follow me there, Mark?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I'm just a little confused is because you agreed to it and it's like now you don't want to do it, Wally. I mean, I understand what you're saying. You're saying the old way is always best. I get it. Sometimes that is. But I'm just saying you agreed to do it and all of a sudden it's like you just don't want to do anything
Okay,
anymore.
all of a sudden, because I felt that
Okay.
this high-rise is not doing what the citizens should expect out of a good parcel of land in our community. Decent parking. I'm providing decent parking.
Okay, Tim?
So the issue at hand is I can't authorize a certificate of occupancy when he finds a tenant in there because of what was built was not what was approved. So tonight, I mean, really, I told Wally, I called him and said, you know, when you find a tenant, I'm not going to be able to issue a certificate of occupancy, and I don't want to put you in that position at the last minute when you find a tenant. So we need to come up with a resolution. I don't know that that can we can come up with that tonight or not. If you want us to sit down, maybe have a separate meeting, see what we can come up with from there. Maybe he doesn't want to do, maybe he's found his compromise.
I guess if the other, and I apologize, I haven't had you guys time to ask questions, but if you don't want to at this point, I would suggest that we table it for tonight and try to get together and sit down and before we do anything, you know, irrational here, let's try to talk to Wally a little bit and see if we can come up with something maybe we got to think about a little bit that will work.
Well, plus, go over there and buy a bottle of beer and work around the place.
Well, maybe we can do that, but yeah, but I just don't believe that we can issue that letter right now without. Mr. Forster.
Tim, can you specifically, what are the things that would prevent him from getting that certificate? Is it because he didn't follow the plan? What are those? What items did he not, or specifically would have to be corrected and or adjusted?
I just showed it to Wally, and you have it in your packet, but the site plan that was approved and really some of the issues in that overlay district are that initially the building we would have wanted that moved up. Now, what we determined at that time was the building has got plenty of useful life left in it, and adding on to it is certainly an improvement.
Yeah,
so we found ways to deviate. And what we did was looking at our downtown framework study that helped create the overlay district, and then even some of the things that are our new comp plan, trying to find ways to cushion that parking lot from Cheyenne Street. So when you drive by, you don't just see cars and pavement, you see something a little bit softer. And we looked at that when we looked at some ideas at 7th as well. Could be just planting some bushes in front. So what he submitted in his plan after we spoke about this was a plan with some bushes in front of the entire parking lot to cushion that. We also got rid of this access location here that is the existing access location in favor of him being able to expand that access location at the alleyway. We felt that if you're going to add to that alleyway and make it as large as he was, removing that access wasn't as big a deal. We want to limit conflicts for people that are walking, hopefully, from Cheyenne Plaza, Pioneer Place, to Sandy's Donuts and Bernie's Liquor. That's the idea here, is to provide options for other people and prevent conflicts. So 2 access locations on one site we feel is unnecessary, and that's part of the compromise we came to. that's what I think he should do is, and it's easy for me to say this because I'm not spending your money, Wally, I apologize, but is get rid of this driveway right here and put the bush in front of there, and we'd probably find the compromise that I think we'd all be happy with. That's probably easier, like I said, for me to say than it is for him to do, of course. But.
Well, I have one thing to say about that, Tim. That's your property. I guess you can do what you want with it.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Is that all city right away, the whole thing?
What's that?
That's not all city right away, is it?
No, so I think he's referring to, it's his property, I'm telling him what to do on it.
Oh, I took that the opposite way there.
I got it.
I didn't get it, Wally. I thought, okay, well, let's just take it there.
Known Wally longer.
I know. I like that so much, and I appreciate that.
Mr. Simmons, you had mentioned the possibility of a motion. Would you clarify that into a motion, please?
Yes, I would. I'd like to make a motion that we table this and try to get some discussion going with that.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to table item number 8, with regard to constructed site versus approved plans of CO-S overlay district for Bernie's Liquor Site. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The item is tabled.
Do we have to going and having a beer in there too, Mayor? Was that part of the,
That's part of the
process, Wally?
Leave that up to some of the rest of you.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you, Wally.
Your Honor, if you don't mind, could I ask the honor of maybe a commissioner to sit in on that meeting? So
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Simmons be a good.
I thought you said you. I said this.
I'm just wondering if Commissioner Simmons or maybe yourself, President, just of your involvement in the downtown district, or even Commissioner Thorstad as well. So.
Just let me know when and where.
Thank you.
Next order of business is the final plat approval of Eagle Run 22 edition. Mr. Solberg, item number 9.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is simply a final plat approval. Eagle Run 22nd is necessary to accommodate expansion of Cheyenne Street south of 32nd for next year's project. There is a need for some additional right-of-way there, and the lot is situated as such that we need to basically cut a couple lots in pieces here. There is some zoning issues that I think we'll come back with at a future date. You'll notice in your packet the larger lot is PUD and the south lot is an R2 lot. We don't want to get into that at this time. What will probably happen after design of Cheyenne Street is done is there will be some leftover property, and at that point we'll look at rezoning. So right now it's just final plat approval subject to conditions listed in staff report.
So, Tim, on the request, it says that it's planned for allow multiple dwellings for senior living there along Cheyenne Street. Is that correct?
I don't see that in the... I might have the wrong staff report in front of me. There's no proposed senior living here. You could, in an R2 zone district, on the...
It's the area that I'm assuming is where the abate motorcycle training is.
Yep, this is
right.
That area.
And on the briefing that you've got here, it's for replat and planned unit development amendment to allow for multiple dwelling.
Apologize for the misprint on the memo.
Okay.
I was looking through the staff report and I didn't see that. So we have a misprint on the memo. Really it's just a plat, so I apologize for that.
Because I was going to oppose that because that's commerce area right there. We want Matt involved in that to get some businesses down there. Because it's just going to blossom even more than it has. So okay.
Absolutely, I apologize for that. So our under item 3 on our memo, there is no request to amend the PUD for multiple dwelling structure for senior living. I think we must have had too many items tonight. So
okay.
Any other questions?
Multitasking, huh?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Solberg on this issue?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. President, maybe just add a little bit of information for Tim. Part of the Cheyenne Reconstruct project, the city had purchased the lots 2 and 3 of the subdivision And so that's why we're seeking the subdivision, as we purchased a portion of the southern half, and now we're replatting it so that the remainder continues with the owner, and then the city lots are to the south. And a portion of those city lots will be built on for Cheyenne. And then in the future, the city has the option to resell the property if necessary. So was the genesis of why it's being replatted.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Any additional questions of Mr. Sober? What is the commission's wishes?
Make a motion to approve the final plot approval with the conditions.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Been moved and second for the final plot approval for Eagle Run 22 edition with the suggestions. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10, approval of the street name change resolution. Mr. Sobert.
Thank you, Your Honor. These street name changes come up every now and then, and typically they're because of unique situations in roads at a time where we were naming streets that were a continuous street but trying to keep them all numbered. So in this case, we had a numbered street. Really didn't make a lot of sense. It went from 13th to 2nd Street to 14th Avenue. We got a request from industrial builders to change the addresses so that people could find them. What we're proposing tonight is to change those 3 address names to Industrial Drive Northeast. This would be able to make it a little bit easier for packages and et cetera to get to this site. Really no comments from the agencies we've sent this to over the past 2 weeks, and are tonight asking for approval.
So the PD's okay with this, Chief?
Of course, we would sign it, so.
Do you have any?
Pardon? I'm sorry.
Do you have any idea what the cost would be for the city for these changes?
Well, whatever the cost of the sign is, Chris. 1.
Never mind.
No. $150.
What businesses are on these streets, Annie?
They have industrial builders has a yard up there that they rent out to another company, so they've had a hard, nobody's been able to find 14th Avenue East up there.
Any other business, I mean, no, Tim, anything else that
No, nothing
they're gonna
else.
have to change, you know, all their stationery, so it's, okay.
We kept industrial builders office the same,
Okay.
so.
Any additional questions? It's the commission's pleasure.
I move we accept it.
Moved by Brad, is there a second, please? Second by Eric. It's been moved and second. Approval of the street name change resolution as presented by Mr. Solberg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next order of business is item number 11, review easement at 825 19th Avenue Northwest. Mr. Alan Ray.
Hello. I have some questions on the easement that I signed on for my property. When I was applying for a permit, Larry Wild, he goes, in order to get your permit, you have to give an easement. And I did. And now that the sewer pipes coming through, I find out that I'm the only one that had to fill that request for an easement and donate my land. And I think I should be treated, equally as, you know, everyone else is. And that's about it.
Mr. Ray, when did you sign that easement? Thank you, sir. 2001.
When did you sign it?
2001.
2001 you signed an easement?
Because of... Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is, as you'll recall, this is part of Improvement District 1308. You'll recall back in August of last year, the City Commission, I believe it was on August 21st, created a Improvement District for special assessments associated with 1308, which is a sewer pipe. I think what he's speaking to is in regards to a prior dedication that was made for the property as part of the platting process, which isn't that uncommon. Chris McShane from my office has actually been the lead on the land acquisition. He's one of my partners and specializes in the land acquisition issues. And so maybe he can speak to the issue if you wanted to, Chris.
Mr. McShane?
Thank you. As John indicated, there was a dedication that was signed. I believe you probably have a copy from Mr. Ray. And that dedication was for right-of-way purposes. It was very broad dedication. As Mr. Shockley indicated, that's a common dedication process when applying for a permit. I don't believe this property was subdivided because it is so small, but it has been in the ET for quite some time. And this was just a normal process of acquiring the right to build something out on that property. So, and there are several other properties up on the 19th Avenue corridor that fall into the same category, and that was actually platted, and the dedication in that plat was also to the public, and that was the same width. It was at 75 feet, which is standard for the city of West Fargo.
Well, to understand this completely, in our extraterritorial rights that the city of West Fargo has, and if there was anyone within that jurisdiction that was going to make an adjustment or build onto their property, part of the criteria of the planning and zoning is that they had to sign an easement allowing utilities to pass through their property in order to get the building permit. Is that a fair summary, a layman's summary?
Mr. President, that would be a correct layman summary, but the technical term is a dedication. There is a difference. There's a significant difference in that.
Would you explain that to the group, please?
Yes, a dedication is a statutory conveyance of a variety of different property rights. Many times it is streets, many times it's utilities. These dedications, because there wasn't an exact determination as to what was going to be necessary within that 75-foot corridor, it was a broad dedication. Same thing with a plat. Again, with a plat, there's a dedication on that plat, and that's a conveyance to the public, which is what the conveyance has been in both of these. A conveyance to the general public for public purposes. What Mr. Ray is concerned about, my understanding, is that there is a sewer force main, which is going to link West Fargo and Fargo, benefiting the entire city of West Fargo, and I think even points outside of the city possibly, that will need to go within that 75-foot corridor that he dedicated back in 2001.
Do a lot of places do this, Shane? A lot of different areas. This isn't just special to 19th Avenue Northeast. I mean, this is everywhere pretty much has to have, you have to give easements, right?
Dedications, yep. Every plat that you saw tonight had a dedication.
Yeah. It's just a natural, you have to be able to have easements.
To further understand, Mr. Ray, if I could direct a question to you. So you signed the dedication easement in 2001. It's now 2018, and there's been new developments of what's going to process through. So your questions that you're raising is that you feel that you should be compensated in a similar rate as the existing negotiations? Is that what we're talking about here?
Part of my problem with the dedication is I find out that when I applied for my permit, I walked into it eyes wide open. But then I find out later on that there's building permits that have been issued where the dedication was not required.
Are you represented, I'm sorry, Mayor, are you represented right now by Mr. Garris? Are you represented?
It's related to the next issue, which is...
Well, right, but then...
We're going to stay on task with Mr. Ray.
I just want to be careful, John, just so that, in case we have to have our attorney come involved here.
Yeah,
You look like you had a response to that.
Yes, I'm not aware of all the building permits that have happened in the past 17 years on 19th Avenue. But it is a very normal, and Mr. Solberg, I'm sure, can speak to that, and the city engineer can speak to that, that it is expected that there would be a dedication in a situation such as what Mr. Solberg was facing in 2001, which is coming to the city for a building permit. And that would be for most any improvement that happens under the jurisdiction of the city of West Fargo.
Thank you, Mr. McShane. Mr. Ray.
I don't really want to throw stones at people, but there's a number of building permits that have been issued out there where the dedication was not required. So I feel that I'm sort of took advantage of by signing that. And when you deal with the city, you should not have to worry about, being taken advantage of. That their policy should be a broad policy and followed through, not just, well, we're going to get you and, well, we'll let you go by. That ain't the way a policy works. That's my complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Ray.
That's all,
Is there, Mr. Scott, can you address that, or is, let's see, Mr. Solberg's here. Either one of you gentlemen have a comment in regard to that?
I'll start with the building permits. At this point, I'm unfamiliar with any building permits that have been issued along 19th Avenue, so if there are other properties out there that did receive a building permit, I'm unaware of it. I can go and research that. It is also possible that the nature of activity that they were permitted for did not require a plat and or to dedicate right away, which is associated with a plat. So I'm also unfamiliar with the improvements that you made back in 2001 when you were required to plat and dedicate.
my property, this probably help you out some. There's some conditions on it, and the plotting that has not taken place.
Sure. So it's possible that if the other properties that received a building permit that you're referring to, which again I haven't substantiated yet, but it's possible that the nature of the work they were permitted for is not the same as the nature of work you were permitted for. I don't know, and I cannot answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Ray, if I may suggest to you, could you leave me copies of those with Mr. Shockley? Of the two? Okay, all right.
Okay, so they have that.
Okay, then we have that. Thank you, sir. What I'd like to suggest here is that we will review exactly what your concerns about consistency in that area, and I'm going to direct staff right now that we do that research for Mr. Ray, and we will be back to you, and we'll analyze it, and we'll talk also with our legal counsel, and hopefully we'll come to some type of resolve. But thank you for bringing this to our attention.
That's all I ask.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next order of business is item number 12. Concerns regarding sewer improvement project number 1308. Mr. McAllister. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. So I have two things of concern in this, actually. So I am chair of Reed Township too, which is out to the north. So the area you're talking about is also the township. So I'll start with the township side of it. They still haven't permitted for the roads, and they're already out there digging and doing construction stuff. So I haven't seen permits on the roads. I'm also would like direction of what they're planning to do on the
from County 17 on the east side on the north. We just reconstructed that entire road, and if you guys are gonna have big trucks out there with dirt on it, then I think we need to sit down and come to an agreement of how that road is gonna end up by the time that you guys are done with construction on the north side of the road. So we have those two permits. Then the other thing that I will point out for the rest of my constituents, if you read through Allen's easement, Kingsley's easement, and Kraft's easement, they are listed as highway easements. I know that their thought is in the city you always put sewer stuff underneath. In the rural districts, you do not. You require two easements. You do require a highway easement as well as a utility easement, and they are completely separate when you're outside the city.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Could we move to the first item with regard to the roads, that type of thing? Is that, who would be the best to address that from our team? Chris? Mr. Scott?
No, you're exactly right. I think a lot of the work out there is going to be done in the fields themselves. There's going to be delivery trucks out here. They're going to be bringing out the pipe and some bedding materials out there. So we'll make sure that we meet any type of load restrictions you have out there. Make sure that those are enforced, and we'll get with you and talk about some type of dust palliative out there, just to make sure that we don't smoke anybody out with the dust.
All right. And then on the east side of 19th Avenue, my concern would be as they started to bring out gravel the other day to reconstruct that, and I told them to stop. So that's like $30-some thousand worth of gravel, and they don't want to dump it on that road if they're going to have dirt all over the road.
Yeah, we
so
should
I
try
just need some direction with that, and then in terms of repairing the road back to where it's
we can
at.
certainly coordinate. Let's coordinate when delivery of that out there. We'll make sure that we as part of the project, we'll make sure it stays bladed, and we'll ensure that whatever gravel out there, we have the same type. We'll do a survey before. I'll come out with you. We'll do a survey together of the road, and afterwards we'll make sure to bring it back.
What I'll probably have you do is actually contact Tom Leonard, because he's the road supervisor. So in terms of coordinating that road, your best bet's Tom.
Okay.
Chris, you're taking the lead on the road issue?
I will.
And just document it, photograph it.
So he noted that you need a permit, or are you gonna obtain a permit? Is that required?
It is required for them either boring underneath or open trenching the roads. At this point, I had expressed to Moore that, because Pat had asked, the permit for boring underneath, and it looks like they're going to bore most of them now as opposed to open trenching, is easier. So as long as, if they're doing the open trench permit, that's fine, but they still have to make it to the township meeting, which is second Tuesday every month. So if they hope to have a permit before October,
that'd be tomorrow.
They need to be there tomorrow.
We'll be there tomorrow.
Permits are required, and I guess the only concern I have is correct. If they start doing work before a permit, that's not.
They shouldn't be out there doing any work right now.
They're still in West Fargo land.
Who's they?
That's Dakota Underground.
But
I'll take lead on that. I'll work with your supervisor. We'll get those permits, and we'll do all the inspections before and after. We got forms for that.
Please communicate with Mr. McAllister or his designated point of contact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, that's item number one.
That's item number
one.
Back
so item number two.
Item number two, I will let, Mr. Garrett does represent the township, so I will let him discuss with the difference in the easements.
Mr. Garris.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, my name is Jonathan Garris of the Garris Law Firm, and I represent not only Reed Township, but also 8 family groups who own property outside of the city of West Fargo in the extraterritorial area. Most of them probably are not residents of West Fargo, but they own property outside of West Fargo, and they also have the Constitution protecting them. And I'd like to first of all tell you, I'm not here to pick a fight. I'm actually trying to head off a fight, and in the process, if the police chief will join me and stand up, and I'm going to pretend for a moment that this man is an English officer wearing a red coat, and he's got a white powdered wig on his head. And because he's an officer in the Army of King George, when he stops by McAllister's farm, he has an expectation that he is going to be quartered in the McAllister farm at the expense of Mr. McAllister, because after all of those cows and those chickens and those pigs are actually the king's pigs, chickens, and cows. And because he's an officer and we're exceptional men when we're officers and gentlemen, we get to live in the farmhouse. And the enlisted men, all your patrol officers, they get the farm. but he has to still pick up the tab for their entire pay and their food for as long as the King's Army is going to be parking on the McAllister farmstead.
Mr. Garris.
Yep.
You're a very eloquent spokesman. Please address the issue at hand.
Constitution says you can't take property without just compensation. You can't do that in a quick take basis unless there is a constitutional and statutory right. The North Dakota legislature has said quick take is in fact one of those exceptional circumstances and you have to follow it to the letter, strictly construed. You haven't done that. Number one, there cannot be quick take except for right of way. And quick take for right-of-way is only when the Legislative Assembly has said you have the right to do it. And as far as I can find in the letter that I've addressed to you, to this date, I have not seen anything from any other source. There has to be a special assessment district, not an improvement district, but a special assessment district that would allow for the taking of right-of-way. There is nothing in the law that says that a temporary easement for construction can be taken by quick take. So even if you do have the right to take quick take for an underground sewer, when in fact the North Dakota Supreme Court has said that right-of-way relates to highways. Right-of-way is taken for the word for right of passage over the ground. And the right-of-way in the North Dakota Supreme Court has been talking about highways. So perhaps if I construe those lines together is that if you are going to take a right-of-way for a highway and you also have an underground sewer system that's going to go in there, you might have right-of-way quick take power if in fact there has, first of all, a special assessment district. It's my understanding that there is an improvement district but not a special assessment district because you're going to use general taxes. That is the only time quick take can be done. It's the North Dakota Constitution that says when quick take is authorized under the circumstances.
Excuse me, Mr. Garris. Could you address that, please, John, with regard to the special assessment district versus
Certainly,
improvement district?
They're the same thing. The improvement districts are created under a statute. After the project is completed, then you go ahead and assess it out. I don't think any decision has been finally made without knowing the full cost of the improvement district, how much will be assessed out. The improvement district was created on August 21st of 2017.
Thank you, sir.
The improvement district is a different concept than a special assessment district, different concepts. And you have to have the special assessment district created before you can ever do the assessment. Only after the actual cost of the construction is known can you assess it. But the initial decision, the initial resolution, has to identify the amount to be funded by special assessment. And that's part of your duty. But there's a statute that is even more preeminent that will stop you in your tracks if you follow it. And that is section 54-12-01.1. And I believe in talking with my clients that this has not been attempted or complied with in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to read it to you. 54-12-01.1, Attorney General to publish eminent domain information. The Attorney General, with cooperation of appropriate state agencies, shall publish online information describing the eminent domain laws of the state. The information must include the reasons for condemnation, the procedures followed by condemnors as defined by Section 32-1501, how citizens may influence the condemnation process, and the rights of property owners and citizens affected by condemnation. And this is the important part. Quote, a condemnor shall notify a property owner of the available online information before making an offer to purchase and initiating a condemnation action. Before there was any attempt by the City of West Fargo to approach any of those property owners, including Reed Township up there, concerning the taking of their property by eminent domain, before there was any attempt to make that offer, state law mandates that you give notice to every one of those property owners that you're coming, and that they have the right to examine the Attorney General's point of view. Failure to do that means that you have not complied with eminent domain statutes in the state of North Dakota. You cannot start an eminent domain action. You cannot start a quick take without complying with the Attorney General's publication notice. And that is mandatory. It's shall notify. My clients never received any such notice. Yep.
John? I just want to follow with you, Mr. Garris, so we're on the same track.
I'm just going to observation here. This isn't a court of law, and I don't know if this discussion...
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Respectfully, we would disagree with the position being taken. The city has not commenced eminent domain proceedings yet. My understanding is that the engineers have been trying to contact and have been in contact with the landowners for the better part of a year. We did receive appraisals on the properties that we're seeking to acquire. An appraisal is undertaken by a third party, and then the appraisals were provided to the landowners, and they're given an opportunity to negotiate. They have come back with counter offers. I think the city is still taking those under advisement.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Mr. McShane, do you have something to add?
No, that's
Okay.
exactly what I was
Very
going
good.
to say. The goal to this point has not been eminent domain. If the city decides to take that next step, then a notice would be properly given and the link would be sent to Mr. Garris' client and all landowners along the road that eminent domain.
So what you're saying is until we take that step, then what Mr. Garris is saying doesn't count? Or?
So we will give that notice.
So far, we're saying we don't have to give it yet, or we haven't, I guess. Not don't have to, but we haven't.
Then he should read the statute, because he says before making an offer to purchase, they have to give the notice.
Mr. Garris, we will be in discussion with our legal advisors
And I concede here, this is not a court of law, but I
Yes,
do
sir.
expect the North Dakota law will be followed by this body.
And I can't imagine that our legal representation would do anything but that.
Very good.
So you've made your point. Is there something else that...
There is, and I'd like to alert you to a possibility of another problem. And
Do you have any suggestions of resolution?
Sure, follow the law. In the process, I represent one of the Landloom family. Landloom Family Trust is located immediately north of the municipal airport. Instead of going down the municipal airport's right-of-way, you went across the road, interfered with the Southeast Cass Water Resource District easement, and goes 75 feet into our property in anticipation of a future road. Don't do that. But more importantly, you didn't give notice and you aren't talking to the right person, because the farm tenant is in possession of the property. You are taking his crop, and you didn't even tell him you were coming. You have never done anything with the farm tenant, and he has the right of possession. The Landloom Family Trust, they have given temporary possession of their property. There might be a mortgage on that. Those people are entitled to notice. You cannot make the landowner responsible for cutting new deals with the farmer or the tenants. You have no right to use the road right away. Mr. Ray, I represent him in this context too. I've reviewed that. There is no utility easement whatsoever. There is a road easement. Road is defined by the North Dakota Supreme Court and by statute as being traveled over the road, over the surface, not under. So as a result, in the dedication of the property, and the easement that was granted, it is for a road right-of-way with no reference to utility right-of-way whatsoever. And the North Dakota Supreme Court has in fact said that easement is only for the limited purpose for which is given. Otherwise, it's a taking. There's a statute that says if it's already got a public use, you have to prove that your new proposed public use is greater in value than the prior public use. So that means that you have to prove that your right to take this, put in this utility easement, is better than the existing roads and the utility lines that are already in existence. You haven't even done that. That has to be part of the proof that you make, because otherwise you have no right to use eminent domain whatsoever.
Mr. Garris, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister, do you have anything additional for us?
I do. So I will, as of my property, because I live up there too, so my first point is what they've asked for easement puts my house, it also puts two of the other houses out of compliance to even be built, mortgaged, or allowed. So what they came back with for offers...
Is that because of distance from the
easement? It's because of distance of right-of-ways and that kind of stuff. And they actually fall underneath West Fargo's, they do fall underneath West Fargo's jurisdiction because it is inside the ET area. So the out-of-compliance property is a thing. The other thing I'd like to point out with the appraisals that came back is the numbers that were given, many of the comparable properties, because there is acreage to some of our properties, were like garnered. and Grandin and cities way out, the difference in land value is astronomical between what they sell land for in Grandin as opposed to what land sells for less than a half mile outside of the city limits. Even like river lots, when you look inside the city of West Fargo right now, everything they're selling for river lots is right around $165,000 an acre. And our offers were like 27.
There is a slight difference. That's protected by the diversion, the Cheyenne diversion, and your property is not protected. So there's a difference in the valuation there.
There is, but my property is also protected by its own private diking system, which your sewer line will go underneath and possibly disrupt. And then in front of my property, I have 114 trees that you have the right to remove that block me off completely from the road. So there's a whole lot of things in there that the appraisal addressed what they thought that the land value could be, but the appraisal did not address all the other issues that end up caused by the project.
I'm just curious, Mark, so I understand what we're asking for. What we're asking for is a 75-foot easement under the ground.
Yep.
That's all.
Yes and no. So the easement papers, some of them do read that, but the letters of intent from Moore also refer to road easements. So at this point, it makes for a slight conflict because the easement letters that they did ask about signing did specifically state utility. However, in the offer letters, it does also mention the road easement. So if you start getting into the road easement as being part of the whole project, that affects my value way differently than what it does if it is just the sewer easement. And so when I did bring back a counter offer into Pat the other day, I did reflect the difference between the two. At the point when they asked for the highway easement, the detrimental impact to my property goes way up. If it's just underground, I
agree with you. What do you mean by the highway easement? What do you mean, like if we have to replace the road or something?
Well, eventually it's an artillery road. So if they can acquire the 75 feet to the north, and considering that the road's already built off center by 30 feet, so when they say that they're acquiring 75 feet from me, if you actually looked at the aerial maps and you figured out the distance in between technically where the center line of the road is supposed to be and what they're taking from me, works out to be like 126 feet because the road's is off center by over 30.
But you don't own any of the roadway.
I do.
You actually own halfway, kind of like I'm on a river lot.
Yep.
Technically, I own halfway to the river.
I
can't do anything with it.
Right.
It's nothing. It's useless to me.
I own halfway to the river and I own to the road.
You know, it just seems, folks, there's a whole lot easier way we could solve some of these problems than what we're going through. But unfortunately, this is the way we have to go. I understand it. Let me say one thing, and I'm going to be done for the night, because I don't, this is getting really deep. But the first thing you brought up, Mark, honestly, about the number one issue, you and Chris, and that shouldn't even come here. You guys should have been able to sit down and talk about that, really. That was a 2-minute conversation that took up, that came from the commission. It could have been done in somebody's office. We all really need to communicate a little bit better moving forward with everything, with life. We just need to settle down and communicate.
Yep. When I called into the city when they were doing the 12th Avenue project and we were having all kinds of traffic issues on 19th Avenue, I was told by all of them that it is not their problem. That's why I brought it to the commission. I was told by Chris, I was told by everyone, until I actually called Rich, I didn't get anything done. And I still didn't hardly get anything done. The county ended up footing the bill for $27,000 worth of dust control because the city wouldn't do anything to help us with the extra 1,900 cars a day on gravel roads through residential areas. When the sheriff finally, and I took a call to Ken Pollack, when the sheriff finally came out, one day 2 cops pulled over 400 cars and trucks for speeding and overweight on the road. And that was all because of the 12th Avenue. I asked them to put up no truck signs. They said, nope, they refused to do it. So it hasn't been very mutual whenever I actually call in and ask anything to be done. It hasn't ever proved to be beneficial. There is never, this was our discussion at the meeting up above, and I know it sounds horrible, there has never been a project that the city of West Fargo has done that in the end hasn't cost my township money. when it deals with the north side. They've never done anything to help with, like I said, easing any of the roads or traffic. You know, they could have tried to improve signage. We had talked about all kinds of issues, and nobody wanted to do any of it. I'd even gone over to some of the meetings to complain. Even the contractors were bringing in all the pipe, overloaded and everything on our gravel roads and driving back around the airport in order to drop them off. And I even had to call in and complain over 15 times with that. So that's why I brought that here instead of just calling, because it hasn't proven effective in the past.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Do you have anything additional for us?
I think that's probably the bulk of it. I don't think that anyone is unwilling to sit down and come to terms on it. I think that the fact is when we read in the paper that the city is going to, the commission meeting mentioned eminent domaining us all and all this before we've hardly gotten anything. The only note that I will say is this is the first offer that they're talking about that they sent back in August. They had done no appraisals. They had done nothing legal. They arbitrarily picked out a very insulting number, so they want to take almost 3/4 of an acre of my property that they offered me $1,400 for. So that's not a great way.
For an easement to bore under, correct?
For permanent easement to bore under, remove that. The other thing that there's a whole slew of stuff in that contract that I would never sign. And, you know, I mean, that goes back to another thing. But even the last one is, that always sticks in my head is in terms of the city's liability, even if they come on my private property, the contract that you've asked me to sign states, if they damage my private property, you are not liable. So it's removing all liability again when we've had all these experiences in the past that shows us how you've treated us up north. And then basically offer us pennies on the dollar of what everything's worth is not a great way to start.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister.
Thank you.
Peter?
Chris has a comment on the
just a quick comment with 12th Avenue is the county was the lead for working out there in township roads. We did participate with the county for blading, dust control, and all those things. We split those costs to the county 50-50. Some of the things, additional trucks and vehicle traffic is up there, is still on the truck route, so we can't limit the number of trucks that go up there, nor can we sign that goes out that, so we don't have that authority up that area. So it's just some of those things up there. It is true when we have some of those projects, they do incur some extra burdens.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. President, one final comment.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps I was premature, and perhaps my clients were premature, because apparently nothing on your agenda says that you're going to do eminent domain by quick take tonight. But we were instructed that that's what you are possibly considering, and that's the reason for their presentation. But if it's not on the agenda, obviously you're not going to do that. So I would appreciate it if you do, that you would give advance notice to me and my clients before it's initiated. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Garris. Item number 12 was informational only. We thank Mr. McAllister. We thank Mr. Ray for both attending tonight with regard to the 19th Avenue project. Item number 13, radio upgrade cost and revenue. Mr. Robert Wilson, Cass County Administrator. Welcome to West Fargo, Robert. It's good to see you.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, Robert Wilson. I am the County Administrator with Cass County, and we want to brief you on some financial discussions and considerations that are centered at the county right now, but they certainly involve and pertain to all members of the county, and we want to bring you into that conversation as early and completely as possible. I think your police chief and other members of your staff may have briefed you. You may understand that we are in the process, a lot of the technical folks are in the process of evaluating options and looking at needed upgrades of the emergency radio system. And we could talk all night about the technical end of that and the requirements and some of the different challenges and logistical things that have to be worked through for that process. but we also have a significant financial discussion to undertake. This is an expensive project. Countywide, we're probably north of $12 million. Statewide, there is also an ultimate solution that must at some point be achieved that is north of $150 million. So myself and one of our Cass County commissioners, Chad Peterson, has joined me tonight, and just wanted to brief you and open a discussion about how we go about paying for the county portion of that. Just a little earlier this evening, the Cass County Commission approved their preliminary budget for 2019, and that really authorizes two different mechanisms to pay for that radio upgrade. And switching back to the technical end really quickly, all of the emergency responders, law enforcement will tell you we've kicked this can down the road as far as we can. We have to make a decision and move forward because it is very quickly becoming a life safety issue. So that being the case, and the number of discussions that still have to go forward on the state end, on the local end there are still some immediate discussions. And as part of the preliminary budget, the Cass County Commission approved both mills that would pay for this upgrade over a couple of years, but also that we could pay for that potentially, submitting that to voters, and with a sales tax. And again, Commissioner Chad Peterson is here with me and really just wants to have that discussion of a number of different options to pay for a very expensive but a needed upgrade. And I would...
Mr. Chad Peterson, Cass County Commissioner. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. President, Commissioners, my name is Chad Peterson. I am a member of the Cass County Commission. Thank you for your time tonight. In the effort of communicating, as Mr. Simmons just said, this is why I am here. We could have handouts to bury you for days and all kinds of technical communications, and that I leave to the experts. My position is a policymaker. Your position is policymakers. We have to figure out what is best. So as Mr. Wilson just said, right now we have, in our preliminary budget, we've increased roughly 4.5 mils worth of taxes. Those 4.5 mils would extend a minimum of 5 years. That's how we would pay for this locally. Right now, the estimated cost for us, as Mr. Wilson says, roughly $12 million. If we wait, chances are that cost is going to go up. This has a couple incentives attached to it right now. Should we commit to this product? There's two different lines we can go. One's essentially a Motorola option. One is an LTE, much like your cell phone option. And again, we can get into the technical jargon at some other date, I would imagine. The other alternative is the sales tax be presented. And again, this is why we're here. The sales tax would roughly last for 12 months. I contend we could sunset it early, much like we did with our jail. If you recall, when we funded our jail prior, we had I believe it was a 3-year or 5-year window. I wasn't on the commission at the time, so I'm going as citizen Chad Hat, trying to remember back when we did this. We sunset it roughly 5 months early. And my hope is that with sales tax, should we proceed that way, with sales tax increasing, and I hope they will continue to increase, be it with just general prosperity or the increase of the internet sales tax we'll now be collecting, that would be able to be sunset early as well. My contention is this, or my opinion is this: sales tax is the option. I'm struggling with asking local taxpayers to fund what amounts to protection for those people that come and visit. Roughly 30,000 people a year, 30,000 people a day come to the Cass County area to work. Never mind those that come here for medical attention, entertainment, things like the Bison, things like West Fargo's celebrations we have periodically, be it your high school or swim meets, whatever. I believe those people need to participate in their own protection. My phrase has been, and my commissioners are sick of hearing me say this, but if someone's visiting from Detroit Lake and they dial 911, DL is not responding. It's our first responders that are responding. And I think it's only fair that they participate in that burden. The other option, again, is property tax. If we solely focus on local landowners, we will be paying a burden of roughly 4.5 mils, and it may go up, may go down, not entirely sure because we don't have anything locked in, but probably going to go up, rarely do things go down, for a minimum of 5 years. Yes, the commercial aspect of that, people buying the widgets will help participate, right, because that'll be passed on to the consumer. But those people that are just visiting, I don't think are going to pay, quote, their fair share of what their burden should be. So again, in an effort just to open a dialogue with you on a formal basis, this is why I am here. I am interested in hearing your opinions. If I'm right, so be it. If I'm wrong, so be it. But I'd rather have this dialogue formally than have us go about something without asking your input. With that, Mr. President, that's all I have.
Mr. Peters, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about the sales tax, are you talking a reallocation of an existing sales tax or an additional sales tax?
An additional 1/2 cent sales tax.
All right, very good. Thank you. Mr. Simmons?
Chad, how much are you talking?
Overall is roughly $12 million. We've seen as high as $17 million. The state estimate still holds at $150 million, but chances are that number's low too.
So you're looking at doing obviously a countywide sales tax?
Yes, sir.
And wanting our support on that? Obviously.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't necessarily need your support. I want.
Well, you want.
I
We
want
want
you
to.
I mean, I do want your support.
You see,
sure.
yeah.
But like I said, I struggle with a community your size, and not to discount those our friends in Kindred or Castleton or the small communities, but I struggle with just telling your commission what we're going to do. The reality is, 70 to 80% of the population is in Fargo. A good portion of the remainder is in West Fargo. Let's be honest. And we're going to go to Fargo next. And as Mr. Wilson just said, I'd love to have shared more detail with you, but we literally just voted an hour and a half ago. We came right over after the meeting.
And what I meant by that, I didn't mean, you need our support or anything like that. What I just meant that if you didn't do a sales tax, if for some reason that wouldn't work, it kind of sounds good. But if we had to go another way, because we have to have the equipment, I think there's probably no doubt about that.
Yes,
we have
sir,
to upgrade. So then it would be probably put upon the cities to come up with the funds.
No, sir. What we're proposing is we will do it through a countywide property tax. So yes, your city indirectly will be receiving our roughly 16 cents on the dollar is your property taxes locally. So that portion, the local burden will be paid for by property taxes.
Mr. Peters, with regard to the assertion that the possibility of property tax, don't you find that extremely politically sensitive due to the environment that is all the discussion that's been going on?
Permit me to be curt?
Please.
If I was
I don't know you any other way.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Dardis. If I was building a toy, absolutely. This is a matter of life safety, which is why legislatively, so I've been very active in this. I was elected, I'm now serving into my 6th year. I've been very active legislatively. Prior to my election, we were lobbying our state to treat this holistically. The right answer is the state to treat this as a whole. The logic is small counties are never going to have the taxing capacity nor the revenue to fund this. It's not possible. We've got counties with 1,000 people. They're never going to be able to do this. I don't care however optimistic they can be. That means that we, as a society, need to say life safety is eminent, life safety is our priority. We will fund it as a state. It does two things. First of all, gets those small counties taken care of. Second thing it does is it makes sure we're all operating on the same radio system. So when DAPL happens again, and we'll have something like that, whether it's a flood here in the valley, something else out west, all we have to do, and I think you sent law enforcement officers out too, our county deputies drive out, they switch their radio to station number 5, and we're all communicating. That to me is so commonsensical, it blows my mind that we haven't treated this way. So we've tried over the last 3 sessions, 2 sessions with me, session prior to mine as well, to get our state legislature to at least acknowledge this is going to be an issue. Up until now, they've all acknowledged it's an issue, but have done nothing about it.
I know for a fact, Chad, because I was actually the police commissioner back when we did the joint dispatch center. And it's still amazing to this day, and so I agree with what you're saying. And I also will agree with you now that I would prefer much to go a sales tax over a property tax. I think we've got enough property tax. So I definitely agree with you there. I think that's the road to go.
I think Chad clarified it for me. My question was to make it clear the county was going to head this program at, but you're going to supply the Fargo, West Fargo Police Department, Kindred, whomever with the equipment. So it's not a county program, it's the county and all the entities underneath that. So we'd be faced with having to do something locally if the county doesn't take this ball and run with it, I guess, with the whole
Mr.
county.
President, Commissioner, that's exactly why I think the county is the right mechanism to do this. Because then they're, not to say anyone's parochial, but just in case they were, you have an overarching blanket of we're taking care of everything, distributed accordingly as to those that need it, whether it's rural ambulance, whether it's City of Fargo Police Department. Everyone's taken care of on the exact same system, and the heavy lifting will be done by one entity, and that's it. Much like our Joint Dispatch Center. It works so well.
Why fight it?
Do you plan on, obviously you do, soliciting the state for more funding, correct?
I will never give up that fight.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. And obviously, we'd want to talk to the chief. I mean, he's going to have a lot of input into this too, but...
Yep, Mr. President, Commissioner Simmons, that's exactly what that's not going to be a fight I'm going to willingly give up, because again, the rural counties will never be able to pay for this. So my happy space would be, we proceed, that sends the message to the state, this is serious, we're not waiting anymore, we are going to have resolution to this, our people are going to be safe. The state legislature then realizes, yes, we have to act. What do we have to do? Bam.
Okay, good.
And then we get reimbursed directly, indirectly, however, and our citizens don't pay any more of a burden than any of our neighbors.
So, Chad, just to reiterate again, what's the timetable? When will we have looking at this? I understood it's beginning next year, and it's the end of life on the systems that most emergency responders use. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Northstead, that's exactly right. Everything's expiring January 1st. So when I say expiring, I mean they'll no longer service or maintain the equipment. I understand that local jurisdictions are trying to get prepared right now and buying things in advance. So you'll have an extra walkie-talkie, an extra communication widget off eBay via, used products, however we can get our hands on them, to have that reserve, because we won't be able to switch, even if we do this, the switch will not be flipped January 1st and everything is better. It's going to take time to implement this, and I think we have a strategy for that as well, in terms of how to get all your squads, all our squads updated over a period of time. But yeah, so the point is that, yes, it expires. The tax will start January 1st as well, be it property or sales, and hopefully get everything funded and our citizens safe.
You'd like us to do a straw poll and communicate that with the results of that to you, of what our commission feels is best, or you?
Mr. President, I'd be tickled pink. That's political technical jargon right there.
Well, I've got a question. The equipment that you're proposing to purchase now with these funds, for the ones that don't get online right away, are they going to be able to be compatible down the road, or is it going to be, how's the delivery mechanism going to be for all of the different entities that need these upgraded radios?
Mr. President, Commissioner Olson, the intent of this program is to get everything to a point where we can flip a switch and everything is simultaneously live. So there's not a staging pattern, and again, I'm not probably the right guy even to be answering this, but that's what's been explained to me. So there will not be a blackout date where we have a void of 3 squad cars or 10 squad cars where they're just not able to communicate with anyone, if that makes sense.
Yep, I understand.
Any other questions for Chad? Thank you for sharing with us this evening. We appreciate it. We will be back in touch with you.
Wonderful. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next order of business is number 14, review the liquor license application for the Worst Beer Hall. I hope I pronounced Worst Beer Hall. Tina Fisk, City Administrator.
Good evening, Commissioners. First of all, I'd like to thank the Police Department for doing a very thorough and quick background check for this one. They turned it around in record time, so we appreciate that. They did their background check and there were no issues whatsoever, so at this time we are recommending approval of the liquor license for Worst Beer Hall.
Thank you, Tina. Any questions of Tina? Any questions of the chief? His department did the background check. Just very comprehensive.
Yeah, they're very good, and I don't see any problems. The only thing that always worries you is you read through the report and they're already commencing with all the remodeling and all the work, and before they got a license, which to me is probably the linchpin of any of those businesses. But I don't see any issue by it. It always worries me, not that we've rejected very many over the years, but I always get challenged that we do a whole bunch of work and then there might be any issues, but that's just a comment, I guess.
I'm fine if they just serve a good meat and spitzel, so I don't care if they serve beer or not.
Looking forward to the pretzels.
So, all right.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second, please, to approve the liquor license application for the Worst Beer Hall? Thank you, Eric. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, number 15, preliminary budget hearing. Aaron Mitchell and Tina Fesk.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. I've met with, Aaron and I have met with, I believe, all of you in different parts of the budget and to get questions answered and things like that. I'm going to do a quick overview of some things tonight, and then I'm going to have Ellen help prepare a few slides for me on where do my tax dollars go and things like that. It was a suggestion of Mike Thorsten, and I thought it was a great one to just kind of get some of that information out there. So if you look at your general fund, if you look at your budget, it's very long. First of all, I'd like to say Aaron put a lot of work into this, and so did the rest of the staff, composing their different narratives and things like that. And I think it turned out really, really well, and he did a very good job on it. So I'd like to thank him for that. Let me start with. Okay, I'll start with this one. This is a breakdown of the city budget. If you look at our budget as a whole, these are the different departments and the percentages of our levies that they take. What I did was what I started out with is I took the city, school, county, state, other, and park levies from 2017, and I compared them with 2018, which will be 19. And our plan is to have our city mill levy total go from 7308 to 73. We did have an increase in our valuation, but we did also have an increase in our needs for the general fund and our police department, and a high increase in our fire department, as well as some other items. And I will explain how we offset some of those costs as we go forward. If you look at this graph, you can see, just the facts of the matter are the different departments and the ones that need the most funding, and it's protection services again. It just is what it is. If you look through, you can see that, I've got another slide that I'll show you. You can see the cost for city services, which I lumped in assessing, finance, administration, economic development, HR, IT, engineering, non-departmental, building permits, planning, buildings and grounds, all those kinds of things. Those are all a smaller piece, and then we've got the little bit bigger ones of the fire and protection and so on and so forth. So that was just one item that I wanted to show you there. And then, let me see it, I think. This is another one that just shows it the same way, just by expenditures. What I did was I took expenditures and took off revenues that were relative to that particular department, that they created those revenues, so I took it off so that we could calculate it out in total. I think so here. Okay, here's the breakdown of the levies. Everything non-city on the 18 one, I have no way of knowing what the other divisions are going to do. Everyone has to have their budgets into the county by, I believe, the 9th, 10th? Tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. And so their items will change, but ours is very flat this year because of the fact that we were able to keep that cost down by finding other revenue sources and utilizing those. Okay, now I will get into this part. The question always comes up, are we being fiscally responsible? Are we managing our tax dollars? What does someone's money go for in the city of West Fargo? So, for instance, if you have, say, a $250,000 house, The total levy would be 284.25 mills is our estimate, which would mean your full tax bill would be $3,198 about. Of that, 26% is city tax, which is $821.25. Now, if you break that down, that means that in a year's time, you pay $46.97 for every city function: court, admin, finance, assessing, economic development, HR, IT, engineering, non-departmental, building permits, planning, buildings, all those things. Each taxpayer that has a $250,000 house, that's what they pay, or it equates to 13 cents a day. The police department is $477.25, or the cost of having good police protection is $1.31 a day. The fire department, $82.38 per year, or 37 cents a day. The street department, $133.91 for all of our street maintenance and snow plowing and sanding and ice, everything, 37 cents. The library, $61.52 or 17 cents a day. Special assessments, that's just the city's portion of specials, it's $8.80, so 2 cents a day, and the airport is $10.42 or 3 cents a day. So overall, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, as we go through this budget, I think it's important for people to understand the importance of the fact that the city is very, very fiscally responsible with their money, and the cost to the taxpayer for the services that are provided is very, very reasonable. I pay more to get my driveway and sidewalk cleaned all winter than I do for police protection. So I mean, I feel that it's important for people to understand the great benefits that the city provides for all the taxpayers in our city. With that being said, in this budget, I have proposed a few things. I'll start with the employee requests and some of the employee information and changes, and then we can go into the other part. In here is a 2% cost of living increase and a 2.5% step increase for each employee. That's using our old step plan. We're getting the results of the compensation study. We have a couple of meetings set up this week, but that won't be in time to implement this budget, so if there's any changes made, that will have to come before you separately. So we didn't try and put that in here because we didn't want to cloud it. Aaron estimated a health insurance increase of 5%. New employees being requested are one accountant for the finance department, a detective for the police department, and an SRO would be the second SRO for the elementary school for the police department, which is 75% covered by the school. The planning department, they have all the ordinance work and so on and so forth that they have to do after creating the comprehensive plan, so they want to hire a planner, get that person to get all their ordinances gone through, up and running, coordinate with Tim and Larry before Larry decides to retire, and then so that we have everything in place. I'm proposing an engineering department to be started with one city engineer, and once that person's on board and gets acclimated, then there would be room in the budget if they're ready for one support engineer to be added to that department. But that would have to be, we would assess that before we would let that position be hired. One street person for additional street maintenance and mowing, and one construction and infrastructure manager for water, sewer, street. Other than that, you'll see numerous changes in the budget I've talked to most of you about. We moved the GIS position from IT to planning department just to make that position more accessible. 75% of the cost of the receptionist, accounts receivable clerk, and utility billing specialist costs were currently being funded in the finance department, but now 75% of their costs are switched to the water sewer area because that's where the majority of their work is done, and it makes more sense to have a cost allocated correctly. A water and sewer employee has been moved to buildings and grounds because his workload is buildings and grounds. Finance HR position budgeted for 2018 was allocated to HR due to candidate interviews. The two, Jenna and Aaron, interviewed, found that it wasn't going to work to hire, they couldn't hire one person to do it. So Jenna, Aaron, and I met, came to an agreement, and we hired an HR person, which is Rachel. Let me see. Assistant clerk of court position was added in 2018 due to the increased workload for the court. And the planning department was switched into having a planning director and a community development director to allow us to utilize Larry Wild's expertise to try and come up with ways to help find funding sources for the core area infrastructure study coming up. One other item of note is that when we go through this, in order to achieve the 73 mills, we had to use some reserve funds in the library, the fire department, and in the general fund. And that equated to about 1.6 million, or saved us about 9.5 mils. So with that, I'll look and see here if you have. Do you have any specific questions for me as to the budget?
Commissioners, any questions for Tina or Mr. Mitchell?
And again, this is a preliminary budget hearing, and so what it will do is set the total expenditures in the levied funds. Now, we still have to talk about enterprise funds and so on and so forth at a later meeting, but this will set the total expenditures in the levied funds. We cannot go up on those expenditures, we can only go down once we've approved it.
Tina, I think you and your staff have done a very good job on this year. It looks very good, so.
I have a question. The preliminary budget has to be submitted tomorrow? Is that what Aaron said? To the county. So if there are line items here that one of the commissioners still want to have additional conversations, does that need to take place tomorrow then?
No. What we're able to do is, let's say you want to have a conversation and you agree as a group that this one needs to go up, then we would just have to take money off of a different line item so that the total stays the same.
Also too, just so on a preliminary, you can always go down.
You can go down, but you can't go up.
You just can't go up.
Yep.
So if commissioners have questions.
My discussion is going to go up, so that's why I'm asking the question, does it have to be tomorrow?
Yes, that's a state legislature thing. What's going to happen is all the taxing entities have to get all their information on the preliminary budget to the county for their tax levy funds to the county tomorrow. And then the county is going to send out a consolidated notice of estimated tax to confuse the taxpayers. And on there, it will list every single budget hearing date for the final budget. And people will be able to look at that, consider it, and then ask questions and be aware of when all the budget hearings are taking place.
I'd like to discuss the court budget at your earliest convenience.
Yes, and I did speak with Ms. Donarski today about that, and there was a discrepancy. The salary increase being requested was not what we had thought it was. It was like what it is now, like $1,000.
It wasn't for it wasn't for our judge, it was for the backup judge or whatever the term is.
And that one's already been adjusted, and I talked to her about that. That was taken care of when the assistant clerk of court was hired.
A brief discussion in the morning on the court budget. The other thing is that during the course of the last several years, the commission prior to this commission had a great deal of dialogue about a city engineer. Okay? This body does not have that discussion as to whether or not philosophically we agree with what, the nature of the discussions that you've had. And I'm going to have to take lead from Mr. Shockley as to how we could do that. But I do believe that as a commission, we need, and as our administration, we need to have some additional conversations about that. Because I know I've not had a lot of conversations about, the thought process as to why. Obviously, it's one of our major sources of revenue that we spend is with, with our legal service and with our engineering firm. I understand that, but I think I need a little more depth as to why that discussion was going that way. And just respectfully, I want to know why.
But we have lots of time between now and when the final budget has to be approved by October 10th.
Very good.
So we've got some time.
Mr. Mitchell, do you have anything to add? Being you were a part of the process of putting this together?
No, I believe Tina did a great job. I just ask that you approve and set the final budget hearing for September 18th, I believe. And that'll give us a little bit of flexibility. You know, we'll have one meeting. The county final budget meeting, we ran into some problems with them last year. We had it on the same date. I had conversations with the county auditor, and he said that they always have their meeting on the first opportunity in September. So if we push ours to the second meeting, that will take care of that and also give us some flexibility. And if we need to push it back, we still can. So September 18th is my preferred date.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions, Aaron? Anybody? Thank you.
Comment. I like the narratives. Rather than just looking at numbers, it helps a newbie like me digest what's going on and where the increase, decrease, all that kinds of stuff. Even though I needed some extra help going through some of it, like why we spent money last year, but none's budgeted for this year. But it really helped a lot, and hope we can continue that.
That's the point of it. So
extremely well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Both. Very well done. We have to, it's not an actionable
I
item.
think we have to make a motion on this.
Is that an actionable
preliminary budget? Yeah, I'll make that motion, Mayor.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Simmons to accept the preliminary budget. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Brad. Second by Brad. Been moved and seconded to accept the preliminary budget for 2018 for the city of West Fargo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item, review a bid tab for Street Improvement District 2239. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commission President and members of the Commission. Tonight, I am bringing forward the bid results for an improvement project for adding guardrails at the diversion crossings on 21st Avenue, 32nd Avenue, and 40th Avenue. These guardrails were originally planned with the 2016 project when we reconstructed 32nd Avenue and 40th Avenue. However, being that they are involving work over the diversion, it required us to get special permits from the Corps of Engineers, which, as most of you have heard now, has been a lengthy process over the last couple of years. So now that we have been fully authorized and permitted to proceed with that work, we opened bids last week, and at this point, we're going to recommend awarding a contract to Earthworks Services for their base bid of $262,318.49. Blah, 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 blah.
How many crossings is this?
There's three crossings. So one at 40th Avenue, one at 32nd Avenue, and then up further north at 21st Avenue where the new Brooks Harbor addition, the north end of the Brooks Harbor development.
All right.
Just curious, I think we need them, but we had guardrails there before and we're replacing them with new ones, or
no? Suddenly
just figured we should probably have them after 20 years.
Good question. My understanding, well, first answer is no, that we did not have guardrails there before. They are part of an improvement plan that Chris and prior staff had developed about 10, 15 years ago, Chris, to do some diversion improvements.
It happened in the early 2000s when we had all the series of floods going out there, and as we keep going out there, you can see this full diversion channel out there, and it's pitch dark, and every time I was out there, I was always worried about going in that ditch. And so it's been something we put on our FEMA list for years upon years. We can never quite get them funded this way, and we saw as development continue to grow, we need and the volumes are increasing. It's just one of those life safety issues. We hate to ever see anyone go over that edge. So that's where we started this process.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I just wonder why there's a revelation now, but I guess...
Yeah, it really came when we had those river sensors out there, and I'm hanging over the edge, and I said, my God, we got to change this. So...
just any other political subdivisions that are assisting with this, Southeast Water, anybody? It's all City of West Fargo.
I think it's all City of West Fargo.
Yes, it's all been... I shouldn't say all of it. I believe the most of it was already planned for District 2239, which is a district we've already bonded for. I'm not sure what the exact dollar amount was budgeted in there, but if it spills out of what we had budgeted in 2239, it would be covered probably in the Cheyenne Street Improvement District. So at this point, yes, it's 100% City of West Fargo project, and it would be 100% assessed, whether it's with the 32nd Avenue and 40th District or the Cheyenne Street Improvement District.
I mean, there's a whole list of different improvements we've done to the diversion in the river to improve our capability of fighting floods. So I don't want to say Southeast Cass or anyone hasn't been participating. They've been great partners. Everyone's a great partner. This just came upon us.
Very good. What's the pleasure of the commission with regard to Street Improvement District number 2239 for guardrails over 3 crossings?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mike. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Second by Eric. It's been moved and seconded to accept the bid tabulation for the Street Improvement District of 2239. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. City Administrator's report. Tina?
Good evening again, Commissioners. I will make this quick because Chris is going to come up and give you a report on the status of the Cheyenne Street project. I had a couple of you ask me, I know Brad specifically did, and I believe Bernie, about our dangerous or vicious, like our dangerous dog ordinance, because of some things that have been happening in the area. And so John sat down with me this morning and we went through what we have, and what we have is a dangerous or vicious animal ordinance that describes extremely well how you determine if a dog is vicious or dangerous. And I'll let John explain it better, but he explained to me that in Century Code you're not, in the state of North Dakota, unless we don't have a specific law that says that you can outlaw certain animals, if I'm correct. So then I'll let him explain it.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of case law around the country. So if a state allows certain breeds to be banned, you can do that. But absent state authorization, you have to draft your ordinance so you ban certain behaviors by dogs, because the theory is that any dog, regardless of breed, can be a dangerous dog. So our ordinance follows that line where we specifically define what factors would cause a dog to be dangerous or vicious. And the ordinance, I think, does a really good job of that. If a dog is found to be dangerous or vicious, it has to be secured in a full enclosure on the property by the owner. And in addition, if it is out walking, it needs to be muzzled. And so we have a good existing ordinance in place right now. I recognize there was an email that may have been sent regarding it. Tina didn't have an opportunity to share the email with me this morning, but we can put together a response to that email.
Yep. Would you like us to respond to that? Send that out? Okay.
And a little bit of history for Commissioner Simmons. The whole dangerous dog ordinance came about when we had an ordinance about snakes that came up. So, if you recall the snakes issue.
We have a very long ordinance on snakes.
I didn't.
Very long ordinance on snakes.
There was recently a horrific accident or incident in western North Dakota, and that's when a number of the taxpayers has reached out to us. So that's why a number of us has reached out to you. I would like to suggest then that if Melissa would please remind the public of the ordinance that we do have, both on the Fargo PD's site as well as the City of West Fargo site, that there is an issue. That the public has expressed some concern, and we want them to know that we do have something in place.
I would suggest also, if there, as in the future for legislative session, Minnesota has a very comprehensive dangerous dog statute that is very well developed and talks about the procedure for licensing dangerous dogs and potentially dangerous dogs. If you could find a sponsor at the North Dakota legislature, it's actually a good model ordinance that could be implemented in North Dakota, and it's very effective. It gives the police department a lot of tools to regulate those types of animals.
Thank you, John.
I have a couple other things. The meeting that was to be held September 3rd, which is Monday, which is Labor Day, I believe you've agreed that we will move that meeting to Tuesday, September 4th. Another comment on the meetings, there is some work that needs to be done that might require a special meeting. I'll let John explain it because I left my notes over there. So I'll let him talk.
Yeah, it's actually related to District 1308. The engineers are going to go back and find out more information about the permit with the township. and then we'll bring back some additional information about the offers that would be made to the property owners. We'll, when we get more information from the township, and we'll get a date scheduled for the meeting.
The meeting you said on the 2nd, on a Tuesday, is that a third meeting of the month, or that's just a regular meeting,
That's
right?
the September one, that's the first meeting of the month.
Okay.
It's, Labor Day is the first Monday of September, and so we're moving it to Tuesday.
Okay.
So, yep. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you before I let Chris up here is, the North Dakota League of Cities Conference is in Grand Forks this year, and it's from September 13th to 15th. It starts on the 13th with an evening social in downtown Grand Forks, and then there's meetings the 14th until noon on the 15th. So far, I have signed up Bernie and Eric. I just need to know if any of the rest of you intend on going, and if you do, just let Courtney or myself know so that we can get you signed up and get you a room.
Is that West Fest weekend?
Yeah, it is.
But it's over Saturday. But that would be too late because the parade's at noon. So yeah, you might have to miss some Saturday stuff down in Grand Forks, but otherwise, Thursday, Friday. Thank you very much, and I'll let Chris up here.
I'll touch quickly on all the road project. Commissioner Olson asked me to update you specifically on Cheyenne Street. But you notice today, if you drive down 9th Street and 13th Avenue, that all our double left turn lanes are now up and operating. We were able to get the signal back into our section control system, so we have all the timing done on that. Down on Veterans and 23rd, we've added a second northbound left turn lane that's fully functional now also, so we should be able to get people into Costco a little bit more quickly. Cheyenne Street, Phase 1, which is 13th Avenue to Beaton Road. They finished the two northbound lanes about mid this week to probably Wednesday. We'll be switching traffic over to that side of the road, and they'll start working on the other side. They need to finish pouring the bike path before they switch over. This next side should go a little bit more quickly. Until all the utility conflicts have been cleared up, and most of the storm sewers just tying over some inlets. There's still some water and sewer work to be done in that section. Phase 2, including the interchange come around nicely. Phase 2 is probably about 4 weeks behind schedule. The main reason behind this is behind schedule is they were having difficulties getting the materials, specifically the manholes for the storm sewer system. They're receiving these materials now, and I think Commissioner Olson called it, looked like the ants out there working. There's so many crews out there working. So I think they'll be making up some good headway on that. Come next Wednesday, that'd be August 15th, Cheyenne Street will be closing between 32nd and 26th Avenues. We met with the fire department today to make sure they can have response to which directions they go for the response times with the contractors at that. So you'll see a lot of work going on that very quickly. They'll be working on the northbound lanes, those 3 lanes on that northbound. So as soon as those are done being paved, they'll be able to open that second back up as they continue work on the other 5 lanes. That's going quite nicely. The interstate work is going nicely. They didn't have as much need for those structures, so they're pretty well on schedule. 13th Avenue, they've switched over in Fargo to the new pavement over there. You see they're preparing the gravel base right now. You've probably seen all the reinforcement iron going out here this week, and they should be paving by early next week. So that's probably pretty close on schedule for that project. So I'm available. If you have any other specific questions, I'll try to answer between Dustin and I'm sure we can do it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Commissioner Olson had brought up the idea of play cards for the city of West Fargo with Phase 2, with all the residents along the west side of Cheyenne. Has that been initiated, or will that be, or is that not a concern with the way that you've got the alternate route?
With the new route now, all the property owners have their own private access road. So we'll have to take a look exactly who's affected by that, but I think for this project or anything in the future, we should have that in there for some identification cards for closing it down just to residents. We should be able to provide those residents some type of identification.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And I have to That was not coming from me. That came from a concerned citizen who lives on that street that we happen to know, so I thought I'd pass it along. So I can't take credit for it.
You brought it
but-
forward, you got, that was a great idea. Tina, do you have any correspondence for us?
No, I do not.
All right. Chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, please. Moved and second to adjourn. We stand adjourned. To staff, thank you all for staying this evening. Good to have you with us tonight. We always appreciate that. Thank you.
night tomorrow night. Night tomorrow night.
Oh, yep. Please, let me have 1 minute of your time. The chief and all of our first responders, we have the night to unite tomorrow night at Elmwood Park, and we'd encourage each and every one of you to be there. Actually, I'm asking the chief to have a checklist, and he'll check you off if you are in attendance or not. Chief would like to have attendance mandatory. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.